The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for our ChemCareers webinar, sponsored by the CK Group. Today we're going to be talking about CChem, Chartered Chemist, and your career. Thanks for joining us. So just to give you a bit of a feel for who's joining us today. Today we've got Dr. Rachel Townsend from Swansea University and Dr. James Fleming from High Force Research Limited. They've offered to join us today because they've recently achieved their CChem via the new attributes, so they're going to be reflecting on the experience of that. Also with me is Nellie Harvey. Nellie is the Professional Standards Specialist here at the Royal Society of Chemistry. So her job is really to try and help our members achieve CChem and provide support and help during that process. And my name is Robert Bowles. I'm the Career and Development Advisor here at the Royal Society of Chemistry. So I give careers advice to our members about both their careers and their professional development. And so we're going to be focusing a bit more not on just on the attributes for CChem, but also how that kind of relates to your career. So hopefully you'll find that of use today. Rachel, if we just start with you, can you just give us a kind of sentence or two about what your current role is and what you're currently at? You're at Swansea University?
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, I am the academic support tutor for the master's program in nanomedicine. They work and do most of my research in an analytical chemistry lab with my colleague, Dr. Ruth Godfrey. I'm kind of, at the moment, I'm bridging the gap between the analytical chemistry side of things and the more nanobiology side of research, and I also do a little bit of teaching on our nanomedicine program and some undergraduate programs as well at Swansea.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Hopefully you can see the slides coming up now as well. James, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm James. I'm a research chemist at High Force Research in County Durham. So I do CRO work. So I'm a synthetic organic chemist, and I do different projects for a wide variety of companies and industry.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. So yeah, we'd like to kind of make sure that we're able to kind of offer CChem a point of view about CChem, both from those that are working in a kind of academic environment, but also those kind of working in the industry as well. So this is really what we're going to be covering in the next sort of half an hour or so. Started off, myself and Nellie are going to talk a little bit about Chartered Chemist, so what it is, and then we're going to kind of move on a bit more into kind of the in-depth about, you know, how CChem can help for your career, and the kind of process that you go through to kind of achieve that. And then we're going to focus really on, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for James and Rachel to kind of talk about their experience of achieving CChem. Then we're going to finish off really with a roundup of the support that's available from us here at the Royal Society of Chemistry for people that are applying for CChem. If any of you do have any questions, do please type them into the chat, and we'll answer them through right at the end of the session. So if we move on quickly, if we could start with you, Nellie, can you tell us a little bit more about CChem, what it is and why it's something that we feel is really important for our community?
Yes, thanks, Rob. So Chartered Chemist is our highest competence-based professional award. And by that I mean it's an award that looks at how you work and the skills that you use. It's something that goes beyond simply having a level of knowledge. So like a degree or any other type of qualification of that sort will reflect the type of knowledge that you have gained over your career so far or up to a certain point. Chartered Chemist is looking at how you use that knowledge in a variety of different ways. It's an award which reflects our members who are active in the community and who go above and beyond what's expected, really, and that they take a central role in the work that they're doing with generally high levels of autonomy, so they work well by themselves and have a significant say over the work that they do and or other people, and they also have a lot of responsibility in the workplace.
Great stuff. So we'll get a bit more into that as we go through some of the attributes. And I think this is a really key point as well, that, you know, Chartered Chemist really does support your entire professional development. So, you know, if you just maybe give us a quick oversight on how you view that, Nellie.
Yes, we have a slide a bit later on. We'll look into more detail, but the main takeaway from this entire webinar is that Chartered Chemist is a great way to frame your professional and personal development. It's generally the start of your development journey, not really the end, and you can make that start at any point in your career. But it's a really good framework from which you can then kind of build on with subsequent activities that you're doing. And yep.
Yeah, great, and that's something we'll come back to with Rachel and James in a bit more detail. Excuse me. So if we look at the kind of attributes that CChem covers, if we just talk us through these, Nellie, as I kind of reveal them.
So this is reflecting that last bullet point on the previous slide. Chartered Chemist Award, right at the beginning, we're looking to understand how you've developed your knowledge. So even before you apply, generally our members have to work towards developing knowledge, and you can do that through qualifications and, more importantly, through on-the-job learning. And in this early pre-application stage, we're looking for the breadth and depth of chemical science and how you use it. So some of our members use this initial stage as an opportunity for further CPD that gets them up to the level for Chartered Chemist.
Great stuff.
And so the second box here is if you are an early career member, generally you'll be working towards a structured continuing professional development pathway. It takes about 2 years, and along the way you'll be making plans with your mentor, tracking your progress to address the developmental needs that together you have highlighted. And this box is really about meeting the requirements for chartership, and we've got a slide on what they are a bit later on.
Great stuff.
Or if you are not early career and you are a bit more established, you can use the chartership approach more like a career retrospective, and together with your mentor, rather than working forwards to meet needs, you might be looking backwards, understanding the decisions that you've made, what were your motivations behind them, and what were the outcomes. And that's where there's a real benefit for Chartered Chemist status, both for early career in the previous box and certainly more established career members.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Nellie.
So we'll have a little bit more of a look later on, but in a nutshell, there are 14 areas that the attributes cover. So when you're actually applying, you'll need to evidence these, and they cover a range of areas from use of knowledge, application of skills, the responsibilities you have as a professional person, both within the workplace and wider, and part of that is being a good science citizen. What sort of supporting evidence will you need in the application? They are the mentor comments. So in the above boxes, you're working with your mentor to understand what you've done and why you've done it, and there your mentor will provide additional comment to really give that top-down view. You'll have referee supporting testimonials, particularly essential if your mentor doesn't know your work so well. They might be a great mentor but not necessarily a close colleague, so that's where a referee comes in. And you'll also need a portfolio of primary evidence to back up all the statements that you've made throughout the application.
And that's maybe something we can talk about a bit more again with Rachel and James about how they put that evidence together and what was actually involved in that process.
Mm-hmm. And so last but by no means least, I've said already that CChem is the start of the journey. So beyond chartership, we ask our members to make a commitment to continuing professional development. And to help you with that, the support from Rob and the rest of the careers team with a consultation. You can also work going forwards with your mentor on reflecting how you've grown and developed since your application. There are further careers consultations that you might have beyond that, and you might want to progress forward and become a mentor for chartership yourself.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Nellie. So moving then onto the attributes, I think it'd be really important to kind of have. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we've done the attributes. We don't need to do those anymore. Sorry, apologies for that. So yeah, let's have a let's talk, if you can briefly talk us through what the attributes are, what we're looking for in applicants to try and demonstrate these attributes, and then we can go on a bit more to talking about the process of actually demonstrating those with our
Yes.
today.
So the attributes fall into 5 main families from A to E. The first one is demonstrating and developing knowledge. The second one is professionalism, so how you are sort of within the workplace and beyond. The third group is communication and influencing. The fourth group is around those professional responsibilities that you have to adhere to, both inside the work environment and outside. And then the last group is around supporting the profession. There's a summary provided here on the slide, and each bullet point shows, apart from in E, each bullet point shows a particular attribute that you have to meet there. So I want to draw your attention to the fact that only demonstrating and developing knowledge comes under A, and actually all the other attributes are around all the other good qualities that you need in order to do your role. There are certain things that really need highlighting, and they are in section B, understanding how well you work by yourself, but then together in a team, then sort of looking towards how you fit within wider organisational needs in terms of planning and delivering work. And then the fourth attribute there is around delivering continuous improvement whilst displaying adaptability. So those attributes are revised from what you might have seen in previous years. In fact, they've all been tweaked slightly and revised, but those are particular ones that we're asking members to reflect wider aspects of their role. For the D group, which is the professional responsibilities, we now have 3 attributes covering your contribution to ensuring a healthy and safe working environment. And the clue there is to recognise that it's not health and safety as you might have acknowledged it in the past. It is a healthy and safe working environment, which then opens it up to people who are not routinely based in the lab. So you might be more desk-based, or you might in fact be going into the work environments of other people. So anything you're doing there to promote that, as well as things like mental health in the workplace, would be great evidence for those attributes. We've also got 2 new ones, one around sustainability and your contribution to ensuring a sustainable future, and then finally in this group, ethical practice, following codes of conduct. And that's where we ask our members to reflect on their workplace code of conduct, as well as how they're fulfilling the RSC code of conduct, and that's an important part. Before we move on, I just want to touch briefly on the last group, supporting the profession. There is in fact only 1 attribute here, but I've separated them out into 3 key elements. The first one is we want our chartered candidates to be active. That means that they are going above and beyond what's expected, that they are seeking opportunities to develop themselves and to bring other people on, to be that ambassador for our subject, support the scientific community and our aims. And this could be through things like outreach, or it could be based within the workplace. You might be giving talks, for example, to other colleagues from other departments. Members often think that supporting the profession starts and stops with outreach, but it really doesn't. We have lots of ways that our members can get involved. For example, our two guests today, even though they've got their CChem, they are supporting the profession by participating in this webinar.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Nellie. So let's move on to the kind of main part, the discussions really of this webinar. Hopefully that's given you a quick overview of the attributes that you're going to be able to needing to demonstrate to achieve CChem. But you know, as a careers advisor and part of the professional development team at the RSC, you know, we get asked a lot about, you know, should I be achieving CChem? Should I be going for it? And I think it's really kind of important to kind of think about how CChem can benefit you and your career, as well as the kind of wider community as well. So this is maybe something that Rachel and James can start to talk on. I mean, I'll just kick it off by kind of highlighting that reflecting on the skills and professional development is really kind of vital for you to kind of apply for CChem directly. And we can then kind of have a chat with the colleagues about their experience of doing that. Can you just, James, if we can start with you, can you just tell us a little bit about your CChem application process and kind of how you went through things?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I originally began the process, I might have thought it would be a little bit easier than it was, because I'm such a traditional synthetic chemist. So putting together those kind of attributes from lab book scans and publication list and project reports seemed quite easy. But it was getting together the rest of it that was more interesting, really, and I think was more helpful for me. I think a lot of people in my position will have similar skills and similar qualifications, but it's kind of making yourself stand out from the crowd a bit that I think this professional development helps. So a lot of the things about outreach that I've tried to do, things about health and safety, things about supporting colleagues, these are things that I might have done, but maybe not thought about so much. I found it really useful to write down and really just think about what I actually do and why I do it.
And so did CChem provide a kind of space for you to do that in, and actually give you a chance to do that maybe for the first time in your career?
Yes, I think so. So I've had annual appraisals where we've kind of touched upon these things, but that's only, you know, done once a year. And as part of my last annual appraisal, I said, I've been thinking about it for a while. I said, I want to go for CChem, and I'm going to use this to kind of take stock of my career and what skills I have and how I can start to improve them.
Thanks very much, James. And what about yourself, Rachel?
Yeah, very similar experience to James, actually. I went into the process thinking that, okay, you know, given my, I've just come out of my PhD and I'm in a sort of traditional academic role. So, oh yeah, okay, using like my lecture notes and my publication list, you know, I can start to build my portfolio, my application that way. And it was when I was sitting down and actually reflecting on the attributes that were involved. I was like, oh, how does it really gave me an opportunity to think about all of the aspects of my job and how I do those things on a daily basis, and really pinpoint as to the reasoning behind why I'm doing these things. And Nellie will tell you as well that one of the hardest things that I found to put down on paper and to really get across was the impact of the choices that I was making in regards to my teaching, in regards to my research, and what the wider impact of that. So yeah, having the opportunity to sit down and actually reflect on these attributes was it's so great for me. Like it's been a great experience for me.
And Nellie, how does that relate? You know, you obviously help a lot of people achieve CChem over the course of a year. Does that chime with other people's experience, do you think?
I think yes, generally it does. And that comment that James made around having annual appraisals, but they are touching on certain aspects. I mean, that's something that our listeners can extend forwards. Often the outputs of our day-to-day work might be quite scientifically based. They could be reports, or they could be decisions that we're making and interacting with colleagues, but actually taking that step back, as Rachel has said, and looking more broadly, not just at the outputs that you create or the scientific breakthroughs that you're making or whatever, but actually understanding what's underpinning the decisions that you're making or your approach to a problem. That's where the proper learning happens with chartership. And I would say that's probably the same for chartership, whatever the subject. And now we have this for the chemical scientists.
Thanks very much, Nellie. And I think also that point about, actually giving you time to do it, I think it is a really key one. It's something that I see a lot as a careers advisor. People don't always kind of have time to kind of, in their day-to-day, particularly at the moment, it's very hectic. So actually kind of registering for CChem, that can actually provide you the impetus to kind of actually start to make that time to have that reflective time for yourself and for your career going forward.
And just on that, Rob, that's a really good point, because we have seen an uptick in the numbers of people registering to start their chartership, and more recently achieving it. And a lot of that is coming down to they're using this time now to focus on a bit of themselves, because they realise that that's important. But we also find with members, sometimes when you have a formal thing, you tell your manager, I'm working towards my CChem, I need to do this, it's for my CChem. Sometimes it's a small thing, but it can really make the difference in terms of getting everybody to understand what you're trying to achieve, and it formalizes all those actions. And perhaps it shouldn't, but sometimes it is the excuse or the reasoning that is just the ticket for you to progress with something, that other people can understand and help you with that.
Great stuff. Rachel, James, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add at this point?
I just wanted to agree with. Oh, go on. Go on, James.
No, sorry, you go first.
I was just going to agree with the statement that Nellie just made about having that time and with your colleagues, understanding that this is something that you're doing, you are actually going for CChem. And I was very fortunate that I had the opportunity to do that with the colleagues that I work with, and they wholeheartedly supported me through the application. I was able to speak to my mentor very regularly, and also my line manager as well, who's typically he does work in the chemical side of things. He's more biology, but having his support as well and having his take on some of the attributes as well, I found really useful. So definitely speak to your colleagues when you're planning to go about the application process.
And James, a final thought from you on this topic?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to say that I think people might realise that a lot of the attributes and a lot of the things they do are already there. Doing CChem just kind of puts a little bit more structure to it. So it made us think a little bit more about who I've talked to and certain things. A lot of things I was already doing. It just puts a little bit of structure to the thought about your career.
Great stuff. Yeah, and that kind of structure for thinking about your career is a really important point to kind of make an important takeaway. So yeah, I mean we've mentioned here, it is an opportunity for you to look back over the past 2 years if you are kind of going down the direct route. If you are and the flip side to that is if you're just kind of starting out in your career, you can actually start thinking and planning for the next couple of years. You know, what development do I need to be undertaking? What skills do I need to be acquiring? How am I going to do them? How am I going to acquire them? And what processes or training or support do I need to put in place to kind of achieve it? And by going through that reflective process, you can say, well, actually, where have you met those attributes over the last 2 years? Or you can also think, actually, how am I going to meet them as I go forward as well? And this is a really key point. I mean, this is something that Rachel touched on. You know, discussing with your mentor why you're using that piece of evidence. What does it show? Why did you do what you did? And would you do anything differently next time? Yeah, is that something you'd like to kind of expand on maybe a little bit more, Rachel?
Yeah, I found finding the piece of evidence for the attributes. I found that on certain ones, like James was saying, it was really clear what piece of evidence I could use. It's like, and immediately it's like, okay, I've got that. That'll help me form the narrative that I want to make around this attribute. And then others, I was really struggling, and on what I could use. And like I said, having a discussion with my mentor, I was very lucky. I was able to do that quite regularly. Having somebody else's take on an attribute, or even your interpretation of it, to go, well, I think it's this, and I think this part of my job or this part of my job role fits this really well. To have somebody go, yeah, okay, it could be this, but what about when you did this? It's really interesting to have that reflection with somebody else as well, especially if they've worked with you for a very long time, or if you work with them on a daily basis and they know what you do very well. It's really interesting to see that. So some of the attributes that I was struggling to find pieces of evidence for definitely benefited from having that discussion and having that different perspective. And like I said, I was really lucky to have my line manager be involved in that process as well. And he actually provided me one of the statements of support as well. So that was really cool to have his input there as well.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah. So I think this is some key takeaways there. So achieving CChem, it can be good for your self-awareness. So reflecting on what you've done, what you've achieved, that can then help you build your confidence in your ability as well. And it can sometimes help you rediscover your energy and rediscover kind of why you like the subject, why you like your job. Just reflecting on your achievements and the abilities and the skills that you're using can really kind of energize you sometimes. We're going to move on a little bit more, and this is kind of, this is more about kind of thinking about things going forward. So really thinking about CChem as a vehicle to help you with your career planning and development, identifying any skills or gaps in your experience that you might have. And I think this was something that I was particularly keen to get Rachel and James's take on. I know you talked to us about how it's kind of helping you going forward. James, do you want to just kind of talk about your experience of CChem with a view to kind of planning what your next steps in your career might be, even though you have actually achieved CChem? How has that kind of set you up to start thinking about where you might be going in your career?
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to take out of CChem was to think about what my skill set is and how I can help other people. So take a more leadership role, hopefully. So part of that is that I'm going to now help and mentor some of my colleagues to go for CChem. So that's kind of the main thing I'm going to take from it, that I'm going to pass on the things that I've learned from this experience, and hopefully in my company bring through a good few more people.
Great stuff, James. And you obviously you talked about wanting to give back, and do you see that as kind of being integral to how you see your career kind of develop in the future as well, and what contribution that might make to it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I do some outreach activities which I enjoy, and I also just like helping out the development of colleagues. We work in quite a close team in my lab, and I think that that helps everyone if we're all working to get the same kind of improvement in skills.
Thanks very much, James. And what about yourself, Rachel? How are you finding your experience of having achieved CChem, and how is that impacting on your future career planning and future ideas for development?
Yeah, actually very similar to James again there. It's the one thing that achieving CChem has done for me and going through that whole process is just making me realize how much I actually want to go forward and help the development of, for me, it's my students. They're always going to be my primary focus. And like I said, by being in the role that I am, where I'm bridging the gap between traditional analytical chemistry techniques and more biosciences, I can really see when I do some of my teaching and do some of my practical demonstrations, the understanding from a student who hasn't got a chemistry background is there, and I've always found that incredibly rewarding in my role. So taking forward, one of the things that has actually come from achieving CChem is that I'm now going to be mentoring and supervising project students of my own this summer. So I'm actually really looking forward to that, and having that sort of collaborative process where they sort of bring the nano element and I sort of teach them and help develop their chemical understanding, which hopefully then will help them go and achieve like their dream job. So really looking forward to that. And touching upon then some outreach, I've done a little bit in the past, but really looking forward to being able to do a little bit more of that and getting involved with more outreach events in the future.
Lovely, thanks very much. Nelly, you obviously kind of have a lot of experience talking to a lot of our members that do go on to achieve CChem. Is there anything else kind of in this area that you'd like to add to Rachel and James's experience?
Well, just to draw on Rachel and James's contributions there, the attributes are hoping to draw out of our members that focus on personal leadership and wider leadership skills throughout the B and the C group of attributes. And then for the last group, E, giving back to that community, our members often find that when they engage in these wider activities, they're often the most interesting, the most fun things that they can do. Usually they're activities that come with a very steep learning curve, and our members get a lot of personal benefit and growth out of meeting that last attribute, giving back to the community. And it's really encouraging to see that both James and Rachel want to build on the lessons learned through the chartership. Now that they've done that, there's practice, now they can apply it for real and take it forward in terms of supporting the development of their students and their colleagues.
Lovely, brilliant. Thanks a lot. I'm going to move on quickly because we're time is ticking on, and I think this is maybe something that they'll have been doing. So this is really advice for all of you. Discussing with your mentor. Can you identify any barriers to your development? Can you look for opportunities either internal or external? So you talked a little bit about doing some outreach opportunities, but there may be opportunities within your organisation as well, and actually see how that's aligned with where you want to be with your career. And are you kind of progressing going forward as well? So just a few things for you, and this is all really good structure for any career planning, as well as for those of you that are doing CChem. So this can really help with your help your development be a bit more focused. Be really clear about what development opportunities you're going to seek, why, getting the buy-in from your colleagues and your people around you. And as we heard both from Rachel and from James, they're both finding this aspect of it very, very rewarding as well. So yeah, I guess really, what else do you think that Rachel and James, Rachel, I can start with you. Is there anything else that you've learned from the CChem process that you can apply to your career, kind of maybe more broadly beyond, just the kind of outreach and the kind of development opportunities, training, working with others? Do you see other opportunities for kind of wider learning as well? And James, if we can maybe start with you a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, like I touched upon, the main thing for me that I would like to take from this is passing on the experiences. I think a lot of the things that I've learned have been quite insightful to me, and I think that I'll continue with them, and they'll also benefit other people. So encouraging people to go on training courses, to take minutes in meetings and discuss these things, and keep an accurate training record. A lot of things I think I just did and had conversations with people and didn't really write anything down, so to speak. That's the kind of thing that I want to pass on, try and help people out.
So that's really around about you being more effective in your role and developing good practice and good habits that you can benefit from within your own career, and then pass on your insights that you gain from doing that to others. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. I think increase my influence in the team. I would like to say.
Great stuff. What about you, Rachel? Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think James hit the nail on the head there about having more influence within your team. I mean, that was one of the main things that we got from going through this application process. And for me, it was such a revelation to actually sit there and understand, and to actually realize impact of all the little jobs that you do on a daily basis, to understand what impact that actually has on the wider team and the wider. So for me, one of the great things from doing CChem and where this is going to take my career, I think you said it, Robert, in your previous slide about rediscovering energy, and it's just made me realize that I actually really enjoyed conducting some research, and I wanted to do more of that in my career moving forward, and having that opportunity to go, this is actually something I'm really interested in, and I want to bring other people in with me to do it. I don't want to just do it by myself. I actually want to work collaboratively as part of a team. And I think that if I hadn't gone through the process of that reflection, I don't think I would have got to this conclusion so quickly in my career. So I'm actually really, really grateful for the opportunity to have done this and to be a part of the scheme, because this is something that I want to take forward, hopefully for the next few years.
And that's a really important takeaway for everyone. I think actually, just doing training, doing development isn't always enough. Quite often the actual learning arises when you actually go through that reflective state, when you actually reflect on, anyone can go on a course, get a certificate. That's not professional development. That's just going on a course, and the deep learning that actually changes your behavior, that has the biggest impact on you and your career, as Rachel really clearly said there, was that kind of reflective process of actually saying, having the time, the space to actually stop and think about what you're doing and where you want to be and what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and then putting plans in place to kind of do more of that going forward.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to move it through a little bit. Nelly, so this is really just a kind of bit of an oversight from us about how we can support people. Maybe some of you are thinking about applying for CChem. Hopefully that's why you joined us today. Nelly, do you just want to, before we get into that in a bit more detail, is there anything else that you wanted to kind of add following on from those previous comments and those previous slides before we move on to kind of this sort of part of the presentation?
Yeah, I think both James and Rachel covered some really good points of motivations for chartership, and I was really pleased to see that notion around refinding your energy and working out actually what are the aspects of your job that you get the most out of. For Rachel, it was working with other colleagues. And I think making that connection is a really valuable insight from chartership, and that's something that I would hope all of our applicants would come to one way or the other. And that comment, I forget now who said it, around getting recognition for all the small day-to-day things. It's so true. Often we're so goal orientated, we're always thinking about that report that we finished, or that key presentation that we've done, that we actually miss and fail to recognize all the steps that we took to get there. And chartership is about taking that time, looking back, thinking about those things, and acknowledging your strengths in those areas for what they are. You aren't good at your jobs just because you're born that way. You're working hard at them. You're working hard at figuring things out, at working with that challenging customer or colleague to work out the best way forward. And those are the things that we all too often can forget, and that's where chartership is doing its little own job there, just to help you remember that those things are important and you do them, and you do them well.
Great stuff, Nelly. So let's move on a bit more about, obviously the RSC, the Royal Society of Chemistry, we're really keen for as many people to kind of achieve charter status as possible. We feel it really kind of helps our, there are personal benefits for the members, but it also helps the profession, and kind of James touched a bit on how he wants to help the profession by kind of helping mentor other people. So, it's important for us that we support you going through that CChem process. So Nelly, do you just want to talk a little bit about the support that we do make available, and how people can access it?
Yes, but just to reflect on that last point that you made there, Rob, that is so key, and I want all the listeners on the call to understand that not only do staff want you to succeed in getting chartership, but the peer review assessors who actually review your applications generally want you to succeed and want to be able to give you chartership. We're certainly not doing this from a position of working out ways to stop you getting it. So in that vein, we have a variety of different methods of support available to you. The first one, we offer consultations with staff such as myself and my colleagues, and we can help you plan how you're going to apply, or if you're actually in the process of applying, the consultations can be used to review your evidence so far, or to help you work out how to rewrite something or to present it in the best way. This would be in addition to the support you get from your own mentor. And for the consultations, I would like you to think of us as a secondary remote mentor in that kind of capacity. Those consultations, generally we have a monthly day that people can book onto, and they're advertised on our events pages on a kind of monthly rolling way, but you can of course request a consultation outside of those days. You can request one any time that you like, generally between 9 and 5 UK time, but we can generally accommodate you. The second option of support we have is our monthly peer-to-peer support group, and they're generally themed. So themes from last year covered how to be an effective mentee, meeting attribute E and giving back to the community, which is a challenge right now with COVID restrictions. Those cafes are a really good opportunity for you to connect with other applicants and realise that you're not doing this alone. Actually, there's a good group of you working towards your chartership out there. We also offer email support, and again, this is with staff, so you can send us questions and we can answer them. Really, any queries you have, don't sit there and suffer in silence. If you're unsure about anything, drop us an email and one of us will be able to answer and guide you. I should add that RSC staff perform the first peer review of your submission, actually, and we are the gatekeepers that allow it to then go forward for its final review. So in fact, we see all the applications and we are best placed to give you that specific guidance on what the assessors are looking for. Sometimes the assessors might turn up to the cafe so you can ask them directly. And the last bullet point on here is a new initiative started to coincide with a revision of chartership that was announced last week. We have now created a pool of experienced chartered chemist mentors, and this group is really for people who find themselves not very well connected with the RSC. So you might be based in a small or medium-sized enterprise where you might not know any other suitable people who could be a mentor. You might be based outside of the UK where perhaps Chartered Chemist isn't as well recognised, or you might be in other types of roles like teaching and would really benefit from that external input for your chartership application. So we have that option available for our members. And if you have any questions, you can visit the website here, and hopefully that has all the information on, including information about applying and guidance, but you can also contact us via email at cchem@rsc.org.
Lovely. So yeah, the key point I think there from Nellie is don't suffer in silence, don't feel like you're on your own. If you're struggling with that one aspect of the CChem application, do get in touch, and you know, we're here waiting for your call. We're happy to help. We have had some questions coming in. Thank you very much for those. We're going to get to those in a second. If you do still have any questions that you want to ask, oh look, do please type them in now. While you're doing that, I'm just going to quickly talk a little bit about the support from my team. So the Career and Professional Development Services team. We basically support our members at any career stages. So we talk from undergraduate right through to kind of senior fellows and even retirement planning. We can provide one-to-one consultations. It used to be in person. It's still much more via Zoom or Teams. See, phone and Skype is a bit old technology now. We can provide all sorts of help in things like career planning, helping you make decisions. We can also help with applications and interviews. We do complement a lot of the work that Nellie does around professional development. So helping you to identify what development you might need going forward. And we often ask questions about things like, you know, is CChem right for them and not. We also run a mentoring scheme. So that's member-to-member mentoring that we run. Now that, if you want to get involved in that, we're always looking for both new mentors and new people being mentored as well. So we have about 100 relationships working at the moment. And we can also kind of help you with networking and point you to some other colleagues in other teams to help you kind of build up your professional networks. We also have a web page and an email. So do drop us a line about anything that you see above, and you know, we're just as friendly as Nellie's team. We, you know, don't suffer in silence. If you've got a career decision to make, we're happy to help. So this is, you know, it's January. We have a full program of other similar ChemCareers webinars going forward. So I'm just going to give you a quick plug for that. The link is on the screen, but you can also get to it through the careers pages as well. So again, if you're looking for other source of information or inspiration through the year, they may be worth checking out later on in the year. Hopefully you're members. If you're not at the moment, I would just say that you do need to be a full member to be able to apply for and achieve Chartered Chemist. So if you have any questions about membership, again, just drop our colleagues in the membership team an email. membership at rsc.org. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because we're getting close to the end, and we've got some great questions coming in, so I'm going to move on to those. I'm just going to put the previous slide up just with our contact details on, so you can kind of have a look at that while we're answering the questions. So lots of questions coming in. Thanks very much for those. First one is actually from someone who is a member. He's a fellow. Nelly, can you talk to us a little bit more about, CChem for fellows? So you asked about, how they could apply, what the process for a fellow might be. Is it, why should a fellow consider applying for CChem?
A great question, and we do have many fellows who apply for Chartered Chemist status. They're looking for that final recognition, particularly around giving back. When you get to fellow status, you usually have had quite an impact on the scientific community, in your workplace, and with other people that you come across over your career. And for those members, when they apply for Chartered Chemist, it's that final recognition on top of all of that. A lot of fellows like to go for it because once they are chartered themselves, they can fulfill the role of chartership mentor to the best and most fullest of their abilities. Because you've gone through that process, you then know what your mentees are going to be going through. So I would say that for a lot of members, perhaps before they get to the fellow stage, chartership is going to be giving them an awful lot of learning and development along the way. Admittedly, that is different once you get to fellow status at any point in your career, but then it becomes something else, and it's about your place in that wider society, being that mentor if you want to do that, or getting that recognition for all the great things that you do already. And yeah, I think generally in my experience, that is why most fellows do go for it. In terms of the process for fellows, we do have two at play. One is if you have got your fellow status within the last 6 months, then you do have a slightly different route to apply for Chartered Chemist. And that draws on some of the evidence that you supplied for your fellow application. If that is you, then drop us a line at cchem@rsc.org letting us know when you got your fellow status, and we'll be able to get the right route and paperwork to you. If you got your fellow status more than 6 months ago, then you would be applying through the direct route for chartership. But we have lots of help and support available for you, and there's nothing better than sitting down with a colleague, myself or a member of my team, to actually work out exactly from all your different experiences what are the right ones for chartership, and that can help speed up the process for members quite a lot.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Nelly. A quick question from Richard. He talked about some of our large employers have worked with the RSC on their graduate development programs, and they're accredited towards CChem criteria. Just real quick question: does that still take place? Is that something that's still happening? Is that something that if you have a graduate training scheme at your organisation, could you look at how to link it up with CChem?
Yes, absolutely. We are very much still doing that. We have nearly 30 employers who are accredited and growing. Hopefully, as of next week, that will be one extra.
Fantastic.
We have links on our website, but if you want direct information from us, please email cchem@rsc.org and I can follow up with you.
Stuff.
I actually look after the program of accreditation of employers, so I will be following up with you.
Real close link there.
Yes.
So I've got a question here from Matt. He's already started CChem application using the 2-year program, using the old 12 attributes. Can he continue using those, or does he need to switch over to the new ones, and how would he go about that?
Yeah, so generally all members who have started their chartership journey, they've gone through the eligibility stage with us and been approved to then put their application together. You will generally carry on using the attributes you have seen up till now. So perhaps for this member, that means that you'll carry on evidencing the 12 attributes. If you did want to switch, and we don't force members to switch because both awards are equivalent in our eyes, we do feel that the revised awards are easier to understand, but they're generally looking at the same things. If you did want to switch to evidencing the 14 attributes, again, just drop us an email and we can make sure that you're all set up on the right system then to make sure that you're evidencing.
Great stuff. So that was a question from Matt and Elisa. I also asked that similar sort of question. So thanks for that. Someone
just to say again, just carry on as you've been going. It will still be valid. It's not going to run out.
Fantastic. I got a question about someone that's had a career gap, had changes in employment. They've started to apply for CChem. I can't see there being a problem there, even if they've had a career gap. But I think, Basis, I'd suggest you just drop an email to Nellie at cchem@rsc.org. And if you do have any concerns about your career history and how that might impact on your CChem application, then Nellie would be happy to answer any queries you have. Also, a question from Adrian. This might be quite relevant for quite a few of you out there, really around other roles aspect and people who kind of not currently in a lab-based environment, but maybe, say, for example, move to marketing. Can you still apply for CChem even if you're not actually working as a lab chemist at the moment? And I know the answer to that, but do you just want to expand on that a little bit more, Nellie?
Yes. Even though we've heard from both of our guests today who still have a lot of interactions with lab work, Chartered Chemist has and continues to be, even more so these days, suitable for anyone who is in a role that is using or drawing on their knowledge of the chemical sciences wherever you're based. We have members who are based in sales, equipment sales, who go for and achieve chartership. We have members who are based in regulatory roles or consultancy roles that are fairly desk-based, going for and achieving chartership. So the short answer is yes. We have broadened out the requirements to cover chemical sciences, which is of course very broad. It's not just chemistry, but in the revision of the attributes, particularly around that health and safety one, we understood the restrictions that was implying for members, and we've addressed that. We've also found for a lot of members, they may start off their career in the lab, but they will very quickly move into other areas, and we've got members who whose work becomes more law-based as they're working through patent work, for example, or logistics if they're in a pharmaceutical manufacturing site. So it was important that our chartered chemist is still suitable for you as your career develops. So absolutely, whether you're desk-based or lab-based, classroom-based or wherever, you can go for chartered chemist if you are still drawing on that knowledge that you've accrued over your career.
Fantastic.
To make decisions.
And we just got two quick questions to wrap up with. Thanks very much for your questions. Pavlos asked, does he have to have a mentor to apply, or can he apply by yourself? Can you just explain about the kind of application process and how you find a mentor, or what the role of the mentor is briefly as well?
Yeah, so the best person to be your mentor is someone who knows you and knows your work. It's great if they're chartered, but if they aren't chartered, then we'll ask for your referee to be chartered. If you're in an organisation or in a community where there are no other chartered people, that's chartered engineers, chartered scientists or chartered chemists, then we'll generally ask for an additional referee. So even if you don't know anyone who's chartered to support you, there's still a route. to answer the question about do I need a mentor, yes, everybody, no matter whether they're a fellow going direct or an early career chemist at the start of their career going via the 2-year route, everybody works with a mentor, and they are essential because they make your first peer review recommendation that you be chartered. So they're an essential part of the application process, but we have support mechanisms to help you identify a suitable person, or if you're in one of those groups mentioned on this slide, you might be able to access our mentoring pool to help you
Great
there
stuff.
and get the most out of the experience.
Thanks, Nelly. And just one final question from Jessica. I know this is something that does come up a lot in various contexts. So they're saying how can work that's work on classified projects. So in this particular example, for the Ministry of Defence in the UK, be assessed during CChem. During a CChem application. I know this is something that comes a lot, not just classified, but also members that working for companies that want to kind of keep their intellectual property or other things confidential. Can you just give us a quick line or two on how that's handled, please?
Yeah, just to say, we have lots of members, both in commercially sensitive work as well as security sensitive work, who go for and achieve Chartered Chemist status. For those members, when they go for it, it gives them an opportunity to talk about their work in such a way that they can share some of their successes with their community through the peer assessors and other people involved in the process. And sometimes if you're working in those settings, you don't actually get too much opportunity to talk to anyone else about the things you've been involved with. So there's that to think about. In terms of how does it actually work, you can redact sensitive information off your evidence. In the written testimonials that you'll provide, you can write them in such a way that you are not divulging anything sensitive. You can talk about project X or location Y or reaction Z or something. If you are unable to share your evidence at all, then we can invite you to an interview. And that is often the most common solution that we have, particularly for people based in the Ministry of Defence and similar roles. I will add to that the accreditation that we have for employers is another way to get around that. So we accredit DSTL, for example, and I know that some of the Ministry of Defence roles are actually incorporated in their accreditation. We also accredit commercial organisations such as BP, for example. So accreditation is a great way to sort of skirt round the issues at hand, and that's probably for another webinar. But the short answer is we have options. Don't worry. You know, we have worked with people in counter-terrorism who can get chartership.
Great
They
stuff.
can do it. Anyone can.
Great stuff. Hopefully, Jessica, that answers your question. Hopefully, you're still with us. I'm just going to wrap up. Really, just kind of. We've run over a bit. I think that's just kind of because we had some great questions at the end. Thanks ever so much for your attention. Rachel, James, thanks very much for taking your time out to join us today. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of add before we say goodbye? Rachel or James? Rachel, yeah.
Just for anyone who's thinking of going for it, please do. Please reach out to the guys at RSC and do make those inquiries, and if you are interested, just go for it. It's a really good experience, and just thank you to Robert and Nelly for having me on today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Great way to finish, but we'll just let James have a final say as well. Anything else you want to add, James?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Top that.
Yeah, I would just say that if anyone is struggling on a certain attribute or piece of evidence, definitely contact Nelly or anyone at the RSC, because it might save a lot of stewing, wondering about how to do it when it could be a very simple answer. Definitely reach out.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to. I suspect that if you do have a query or question, chances are Nelly's probably heard it before, and I'm sure she'll be able to come up with an answer. Thanks ever so much for your time today. I'm going to wrap it up there. if you did want to kind of revisit any of this within our session, we will be uploading the session to YouTube probably within the next day or two. So keep an eye out for us on Twitter or via the main RSC Careers website. There'll be a link to it on there as well. Rachel, James, thanks very much for your time. Nellie, thank you for explaining everything so well. And yeah, hopefully we'll hear from some of you, and hopefully some of you will consider applying for CChem. Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rob. Bye.